In this video, I'm going to compare the flavors of Coca-Cola from different parts of North America. Coke from the US, Canada, and Mexico. Mexican Coca-Cola has become a popular item outside of Mexico because, unlike the others, it's made with cane sugar and has a slightly different flavor. But as you'll see, there's an interesting and surprising twist to this when you really dig into it. But first, here's a little bit of history on Coca-Cola. The world's first Coca-Cola was served on May 8, 1886 at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta, Georgia. It was the creation of Dr. John Pemberton as a tonic for common ailments. He likely had no idea what was in store for his product, the company, and an industry that would grow into the giant it is today. You can still get a Coke made the old-fashioned way at the Lexington Candy Shop in New York. They hand mix a sweetened version of the syrup and use a chopping action with a spoon to mix it as you watch. They also make egg creams and other old-school New York treats. Coca-Cola is bottled and distributed all over the world, but all of the Coke syrup is made in Georgia and shipped worldwide to be combined with local water, a sweetener, and carbonation. Cocaine used to be present in the original formulation of the drink, but in 1903, the use of fresh coca leaves were removed from the process, and instead, the company started using spent leaves, the leftovers of the cocaine extraction process containing only very low levels of cocaine. And later in 1929, Coca-Cola started using completely cocaine-free coca leaf extract, which provides the flavor of the plant without any trace of the drug. Today, the coca leaf extract is prepared by the Stepan Company at a plant in Maywood, New Jersey. And they are the only commercial entity in the United States authorized by the Drug Enforcement Agency to import coca leaves. These come primarily from Peru via the National Coca Company, and approximately 100 metric tons of the dried leaves are imported each year. While the leaf extract is sold to the Coca-Cola Company, the cocaine is sold to Mallinckrodt Pharmaceutical, who make cocaine hydrochloride and other specialized compounds for medical applications. Before we get into the specific ingredient differences between the retail Coca-Cola varieties sold in the US, Canada, and Mexico, let's do a taste test. Okay, we're going to do our big taste test. Today we have Coca-Cola from the United States, Canada, and Mexico. We're going to open them up and pour them and see how they each look in the glass before I really do anything in terms of tasting. So let's get these open. I tried to get glass bottles for everything, but I couldn't find a glass bottle for the US one. But let's do this. This is the cane sugar Coca-Cola, specialty Coca-Cola. A lot of recipes call for that, made with cane sugar. This is the Canadian Coca-Cola. And we'll go through the ingredients of each of these a little later. And this is American Coca-Cola. You can see how they all pretty much foam the same. Okay, now, going to do kind of an initial taste. Start with the US. So, initial taste, I get sweet right out of the bat. I get a bit of a vanilla. It's not very acidic. Not very tart. I get a little bit of a citrusy flavor. Mouthfeel, a bit viscous. Carbonation, it's not really burning or biting my mouth very much. Aftertaste, just tastes like a little weak Coke aftertaste. I'm going to rinse my palate. All right. Sufficiently rinsed. Now, let's try the Canadian one. The initial taste, I get more of a tart or sour at the beginning than the American Coke. I think the American Coke tastes a little sweeter than the Canadian Coke. I'm going to go back and compare these again one more time at the end, but also a little more of a bite in the back of the tongue. don't think I'm quite getting the citrusy flavors I got from the US Coke. And aftertaste goes away pretty quickly. So we're going to do another little rinse. Okay. Now, on to Mexico. This is the one that's made with the cane sugar. Initial taste also is, I'd say, a similar acid level to the Canadian Coke. In terms of the sugar, I'd say it's less sweet than the other two a little bit, but just has a little bit of a brown sugary kind of flavor. So you might expect that with cane sugar. A little bit of citrus. And I'm going to see if there's any aftertaste worth noting. Not really. They all kind of settle down quickly. Now, I'm just going to go really quickly against each one of these one more time. Okay, US. I'm agreeing with that first assessment. It's sweeter off the top. Canadian Coke seems to be a little bit more tart, a little more sharp, comparable sweetness. And the cane sugar Coke from Mexico. Sort of at, in the back of the mouth, I get more of a rounder sugar flavor, if you will. I think that's consistent with the notion of it being cane sugar. Just a little bit more full, like brown sugar, a little molassesy. Just a little. It's subtle. But they're all very, very similar. I think the Canadian and American Coke are almost identical. They're very similar. The notable one that's slightly different is the specialty Coke from Mexico. However, there is also a fourth Coke. And in order to find that, we have to go to Mexico. So let's go. We're in Mexico, and we actually bought a Coca-Cola in Mexico. When I looked at the ingredients, even though they're written in Spanish, it appears to have high fructose corn sugar in it. Not like the quote Mexican Coke that you buy at home. You think it's a specialty product. I'm going to do a little taste test right now. I would say a little less tart than the Canadian version, but it doesn't have the slightly cane, sugary taste of the specialty Mexican product. It might be virtually identical to the Canadian local Coke because I don't have one beside me here to try it, but it doesn't taste like Mexican Coke. And yet I'm in Mexico with a Mexican Coke. Go figure. All right, we'll do more research.
Now let's look at the ingredients side by side. This chart was compiled directly from the product labels on the ones I tasted, but I had to translate the domestic Mexican ingredients on the side of the can from Spanish. A quick scan of the chart indicates that all 4 products have the same 6 ingredients: carbonated water, some sugars, caramel color, phosphoric acid, flavorings, and caffeine. The sugar seems to be the ingredient that varies the most, and my research leads me to believe that this is a function of the available sweeteners by location. The interest in the specialty Mexican Coke is due to its use of cane sugar, and it's called for in many food recipes for its slightly different flavor. I also learned that the sweetener used in the Canadian Coca-Cola has a higher ratio of glucose to fructose corn syrup as used in the United States. This is also said to make the Canadian variant less sweet, which is consistent with my own taste testing. An article published by the CBC reported that Coca-Cola Canada announced that for over a century, the Canadian version of Coca-Cola had more sugar than its US counterpart. But in January 2015, Coke announced it would start producing the Canadian version with the same amount of sugar as in the US, as well as packaging it in smaller cans and bottles. The reporting says that Canadian Coke dropped the amount of sugar by 7% and the amount of calories were reduced by 12.5%. You can see that the amount of sugar and caffeine doesn't vary much across all 4 versions I tasted. Also note that the Mexican domestic product doesn't report the caffeine quantity on the can at all, but my guess is that it would be in line with the others. The, quote, flavorings are a mystery, and because the recipe is protected as a closely guarded trade secret, we really don't know what's in there except for the well-documented use of coca leaf extract. It's also interesting that the domestic Mexican Coke identifies the specific use of caramel color type 4, while the others aren't specific about the type. This might be a food product labeling requirement in Mexico, but I'm not sure. If you know, please leave a comment below. For me, the biggest surprise in researching this topic was that Mexican Coke, as we know it in most places other than Mexico, is really a specialty product made the old way with cane sugar. But the bulk of what the actual Mexican domestic consumer of the product gets is basically the same as the rest of North America, using corn syrup, glucose and fructose, and the generic word sugar. I put some additional information and links in the description below. Hopefully you found this video interesting and will give it a like. Also, please subscribe to my channel. Every new subscriber really helps a lot. Thanks.